Hey everybody, it's Pete A. Turner, executive producer and host of The Break It Down Show. So I wanted to, as we put together the Prison Chronicles, we started gathering secondary information, and some of the people didn't make the cut into the series, and not for any reason other than just the project gets to be so big and you can only record so much. So we've released some of this stuff as secondary content. One of those secondary characters who didn't make the main part of the story, and mostly because of timing, because her story is incredible, is a lady named London Croudy. And London, she got swept up. She lost her way. You'll hear her say that during the episode. And what she did was, well, ultimately, she got caught with a bunch of people in, I guess you would call it a drug sting, if you want to call it anything. And what turned out to be a somewhat minor first-time offense ended up being a significant chunk of time. Now, who knows why? But what we do know is that it doesn't make sense. When you hear her talk about what she did and where she was at, he's trying to add it all up. You know, she's bitter towards the system. The system is clearly bitter towards her, and you end up with this outcome. It doesn't seem to match what the crime was. So if you're interested in trying to understand the condition, the systematic racism that is in the court system, I think this will be an episode that's going to be challenging. I'm having trouble explaining how challenging it was, because you hear this and you're like, wait, what? How is this? This doesn't seem to work right. My co-host in this episode, he doesn't do a whole lot of co-hosting, but it's Matt Ray. Matt Ray is one of our featured subjects in the Prison Chronicles. And so he brought her in, and you can hear, look, and let me tell you something. In London's defense, she was very scared to do this. She was worried that I might come after her in some way, and she didn't want to do that. And I was able to calm her down enough to say, hey, listen, I want you to tell your story. So this is really what we're trying to do, is understand her story, her perspective, because I've heard a lot of this where there's an instant rejection of the system because there's no reason for there not to be. The system has rejected people in general. So when you look around and all your friends have been shot, they've been thrown in jail, they've been treated unfairly, you just assume that that's going to happen to you. And I think it's a normal response. So when you hear London's story, that's what you're going to hear. And it's one of these secondary episodes for the Prison Chronicles, but it's a story that I couldn't cut it and leave it. I had to publish it in its own fashion. So get ready to get uncomfortable. All right, one more thing to say. Scott and I are going to be driving across the nation to South Carolina to lay his friend Dan White to rest. He killed himself with alcohol. And gosh, we're tired of that as veterans. And it's just it's a heavy episode, everybody. We got Prison Chronicles, and we got suicides from veterans. So if you can support us, go to savethebrave.org, drop a little bit of money in the pot, and that will help us to hopefully prevent the next person from doing it, because Scott and I are really sick of getting these calls and emails all the time. So we will be doing that starting on the 13th, leaving from Temecula and heading all the way out to South Carolina. You can follow us along the way, and then you can follow us coming back. Any support you can give, whether you're talking to somebody or calling or telling a friend or whatever it's going to be, that would be great. Scott's going to ride the motorcycle. I'm going to drive in the chase truck, and you'll get a chance to experience that whole thing, probably most likely on Instagram. Is probably the best way. All right, here comes the exceptionally challenging story of London Croudy.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay
This
Moore.
is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Morata.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hi, this is London Croudy, and you're listening to The Break It Down Show.
I'm on here with Matt Ray, who's co-hosting with me, and we've got London Croudy on because I'm still exploring the whole prison system situation, and London has a unique story of life and redemption and where she's at now, and from what Matt was talking about, like the first thing he says is that London is she is always working, always grinding, always hustling. And so I'm always interested in these kinds of stories, partly because what I think makes the U.S. great is that if you have the ability to outwork your problems, you can achieve just about anything you set your mind to. So I love these kind of stories where we get to talk to folks that are on the trail. It's easy to look ahead and say, I'm going to be that. And whatever that is, look at it and go, that's what I want to be. But the reality is all the hard work to get to that point is often forgotten and not illustrated. So I don't want to pass up the chance to talk to London and get an idea of your story. I was reading your article that they did on you and Mother Jones. Can you expand a little bit on your background? We don't spend a whole lot of time there because you guys should go read that story. And you should definitely follow London on Instagram.
on Instagram at starting_with_London, starting with London, and then you'll get an idea of her story and how she's trying to, I don't know, I guess you focus on women and sort of coaching and enabling them to pursue their dreams. So just sort of start at the beginning for right now, London, and take us through, early life, the incarceration, and then getting out, and then what you've become since then, because that's the best part of this whole story.
Okay, yes, thank you. So my name is London Croudy. I am originally from New Jersey, born and raised. I grew up in a single parent household, but I grew up in a very loving household. I was very aware at a young age what it was to struggle. I grew up in the inner city. But yeah, what other people might think of as a scary place or something of that nature, that was what my home was. I always been super ambitious. I grew up loving the arts, so I was always acting. I've been in NAACP AXO. You gave me the ability to travel across the United States and do monologue competitions. I went to school in New York City for film and television, and I was just always, that was my dream. I wanted to become rich and famous in Hollywood so that I could take care of my mother and my grandmother. Along the way, my mother got sick. She went through a depression period, especially she was one of the people that really struggled when the recession hit in 2003, 2004. And yeah, just really took her on a loop. So I had this whole plan of I was going to go help my mother get herself together before continuing chasing my dreams, where I was going to go to LA. What was taking me to LA is I got the opportunity at the American Black Film Festival to work with John Singleton, who encouraged me to go to LA and continue to chase my dreams, that I really had talent. And so that was the plan. After leaving school in New York City, I went to North Carolina, where my mother was located, to help her. And it was during that time where my mother got really ill and she started to having seizures.
Oh, no.
She had one seizure when it was just her and I home. I called 911 and no one picked up their phone. And we were out there by ourselves, and that really scarred me. And so my mother, being my best friend, the woman that had sacrificed for me so much and has never left my side, it was her moment of need, and I was never going to leave my mother's side. So I decided to stay. But the thing was, I never had a plan B. I was always had this one-track mind of becoming an actress. And so when I didn't have a plan B, I just got more and so into the street life. I lost myself, got involved with someone, got introduced into it was just really helpful because I finally was living a life where I didn't have to struggle. So that was the only thing that I was thinking of. I just got intoxicated by living just a life without struggle. And it was during that time where I just really lost myself. I lost my dreams. I lost my ambition. And it took literally maybe close to 2 years later where I found myself with a 13-year, 9-month sentence after never being in trouble for the first time. Yeah, so that is a very twist and turn story itself, because I signed a 5-year plea, but ended up getting the 13 years, 9 months. The day that I walked into the prison system, I was determined that I was not going to be that person that they were trying to make me out to be that day in the courtroom of my sentencing. They made me sound like a monster. They took every little thing that they can think of and twisted around to make me sound like an evil person.
Right.
And I wasn't. I was a 23-year-old young woman who had lost herself, and I just needed to get back on the right track. But they thought that what I did when I had a conspiracy charge, meaning that I was not actively involved in any particular crime, but they thought that I deserved 20 years in prison.
Wow. What kind of representation did you have in court? Did you have a court-appointed lawyer? Do you have your own lawyer? What
I did. I did. I had a court-appointed in federal system. This is federal court. So just to get someone to practice, you have to get a specific lawyer that practice federal law to look over your case. And that alone starts off at minimum normally $5,000.
Yeah, I know personally from my public defender, not fancy like that, like just a standard public defender. And it was all I could do to get any of their time. You know, like my case was just the next case they pulled out of the basket, and they would read through it real fast. And then that was my lawyer. It wasn't in any way an advocate. It was just a procedural thing. And she did her best, and she tried to, you know, but I had as a service member, I had rights to veteran deferment. I have PTSD, and the DA didn't want to give me my right because they didn't even know about veteran court. And this is a simple thing. That's a simple thing. California has this across the board, and so I can't even imagine that federal court. It's got to be much bigger, and gosh, you know, just the capacity of the lawyers to get to the cases and do them in a way that, as a citizen, you would expect. You know, like as a citizen, I know we provide lawyers to people, but I've never thought about the process until I had to go through it. And if you overwhelm a lawyer with more cases than they can do in a day, then how is that an advocate for the defendant? It just doesn't make any damn sense.
I agree.
All right. Okay. So why did they come at you so hard? I mean, what you said there was no conspiracy on your end. Every person who's on trial is going to say that, of course, but what's the deal? Like, what can you make sense of why they wanted so much from you for what your charge was?
I mean, I know that I was part of a large case, and the situation at hand, it was almost like it was personal. So whatever it was, but the thing is that although my case, like I get that reaction honestly a lot when I tell people about what happened in my case. But the thing is that it's really nothing special about it because I was locked up with so many other individuals who went through similar things. See, the justice system preys on the poor and the honestly the Black and brown. And so that's another part of like what I've seen also, not just myself, what other people were going through in that courtroom. And so, yeah, it's to some folks, it's just a job. Okay.
So they're doing their job and they see you as the enemy for whatever reason. And you're in a part of a big case. I'm trying to make sense of this out loud. So you're part of a big case and it's like everybody gets the same kind of package deal, almost like Costco. You get a big box of the same thing. Were the people who were part of this bigger thing at the root of it, were they a big problem then in the community? Was there a lot of damage in the civil side where it's like this had gone on long enough, everybody involved is going to get it because of all of the chaos that the main people caused? Okay.
Absolutely not. And I wouldn't even go into that conversation because I think that takes away. I think that society and people, when people try to articulate the conversation and describe it in that manner, it takes away what's really being done. No one's looking at the folks' background. No one is looking at the situation in its whole. And so I think that that's how folks who support the system or are trying to whatever figure it out, that's an easy cop-out way that they try to justify all the unjust that's going on and saying like, oh, well, okay, were they a menace to society? Were they pumping drugs into the society? Then now it just makes it okay. Well, that now we understand why this has happened. Now we understand why they gave this guy who was selling marijuana or whatever case a 30-year sentence, or it just doesn't make sense. And I'm sorry, just to, feedback off of that, but I was just a part of a women's group that last weekend where all the women were formerly incarcerated. And I remember we had to tell our stories. And so here I am, I got this 13-year, 9-month sentence, and I had a drug crime, never touched a drug. But then you have a female who is white who did sell and use drugs, and she did less than 2 years. And it was the folks that were listening at the table, and they asked her specifically, they was like, well, how did she not touch anything and this and the other, and she got this time, and you were actually dealing and using, and you got this time and everything. What do you think the fact of one of the causes of that? And she honestly, and I appreciated that, said that, yes, I think it had a great deal to do because of the color of my skin.
Okay. Well, that's fair.
And so that definitely plays a part in it.
Okay. Yeah. And I want to understand this. I mean, I don't fear any specific question because seeking to understand this problem is part of the reason why we have these conversations. And and understand where I'm coming from with this. The DA is elected by the people, and they've got a job to do. I'm not absolving them of any kind of systematic racism or any of that kind of thing at all, but I am trying to understand the nature of the crime in general. If it was part of a larger thing, there might have been quite a bit of. I don't know if there was murder involved. Were there families being
No.
terrorized? So you're saying this is just like drug operations or something like that, and then it became like a larger system, and so then you guys go out there, and then you're made to be a bigger criminal than what they're saying, I guess.
Right. And what I would like to propose is, what does that have to do? And I'm telling you, I'm speaking for myself. I can't speak for anybody
Sure.
else on my case. I'm speaking for London Croudy. And so London Croudy never touched any drugs.
Right.
It was in a wide spoke, like again, to a longer conversation, whatever case, it was pretty much, I felt like it was a revengeful tactic because I was locked up after a year. Everybody was locked up a year and some change before I even got locked up. And so it was a magazine that I was in that participated in, or whatever the case, that the prosecutor, she didn't appreciate it. And it was a whole story behind it that I just don't want to get into right now.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that my charge was conspiracy to distribute heroin, and I got, as a first time offender, 13 years, 9 months after signing a 5-year plea and asked to give 20 years. They came up with 13 years, 9 months.
What would you say is normal and fair for someone who has that charge and takes a plea? Like, is 5 years even too much, or is that a reasonable amount of time for what you were accused of?
You know what? It's crazy because I really battled this question with myself. For me, I would say at the beginning stages that, I definitely did deserve time because I will take full responsibility as far as that I made poor choices. I basically, no, I didn't touch the drugs, but I was able to benefit off of the proceeds, the off of drug money.
Right.
And so I will take responsibility that, as far as, especially for my people, and when I say my people, I'm talking about the Black community, as far as being a part of the problem. Like they're as far as putting that poison into in our society or whatever the case, and then the domino effect that it causes. And so that's what I would say that I felt like I deserve some time with. But then I have a lot of people who challenge me and ask me, why do I feel like that when there's like other choices? There could have been other routes versus putting me in prison.
Right.
And then, I was in prison and I just have to go. It does, because it's just for real fresh for me, is that I was in that system where I've seen like other women who went into prison. They were in there. They went in and out like twice or 3 times in my stay, and they were all white women. And it was just like, and I'm not saying that white women don't get, punishment, time and everything, but it's definitely disappropriate of how they sentence us and so forth. And I'm sitting there thinking of all the things that I missed out on and everything that I had to endure, and within those 8 years, and the things that I've lost out on. And so could there have been another route, another solution versus putting me in prison?
Right.
I mean, I cannot believe that person thought that I deserved 20 years in prison. And when I say and then for them to even justify for giving me that time, they said they thought that it would help me from making future mistakes. Well, let me tell you something. I've never been in trouble. That's BS, because I've never been in trouble. And in my entire 8 years, I've never got one write-up.
Right. Okay.
And so that doesn't like, so if you're asking me if I think I deserve the time, a part of me does, but then I do see how I feel like they preyed on us, the community, whatever. Because I feel like there's definitely different options that they can do versus throwing someone in prison.
Fair
because
enough,
prison can truly knock someone's course off for the rest of life. Everybody's not like me. Everybody's not as strong as me. And so therefore, sometimes people go into prison way less shorter sentence than me, and it totally turns the course of their life.
Let me ask you, what happened with the deal? I mean, so basically, for the audience, I'm going to explain. So she had negotiated a deal, I'm assuming either with the DA or the DA's representative, and they said, yeah, 5 years and this much probate, whatever. She had an idea. And before, at least in California, and I'm assuming this is the same in federal court, before you go up there and you agree to a plea, the judge says, hey, is there a deal that you've been offered? And then you say yes. They say, the DA says, yeah, we're going to do 5 years with 5 years of probation and, whatever, drug and alcohol counseling. And I'm making this up, not attributing that to London. So everybody knows the deal. And then the judge goes crawfish on you. What the hell happened?
Okay, so I'm not going to get more into my legal stuff, but I'm just going to put this out there on how crooked the system can be. So when I was offered a 5-year plea, I tripped out. I said, oh my goodness, I cannot do 5 years for something I did not do. I said, where everybody else's motion and discovery is hundreds of pages, mine's is less than 10. The things that they're saying in this is not true. I want to take it to court.
Yeah.
I was told by my lawyer that he says the federal system has a 98% conviction rate. You take it to court, you will lose. This is what you do. You sign this plea and you go do the drug program and all this other stuff. And then in a year, you can just start your life over. And I said, but why 5 years? He said, because your minimum is 5 years. So the plea is not going to be under 5 years. So the day before we went into the courtroom to submit my plea, my lawyer came to visit me again. And so while we were sitting there, I asked him, I said, let me ask you a question. Your wife has cancer, right? He said, yes. I said, and you're not a doctor, are you? He said, no. And I said, so you have a certain dependency for those doctors to take care of your wife? He said, yes. I said, so what if they said to you, I'm sorry, sir, there's no more that we can do for your wife. What's the first thing you're going to say to that doctor? And he just sat there. And I said, the first thing you would say is, have you done everything that you can do for her? Because you have a certain dependency on them because you're not a doctor. And I said, so that's what I'm telling you. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm asking you, have you done everything you can do for me? He got his papers up and he walked out the room. The next day when we were about to submit my plea, he ran over to me and said he couldn't sleep. He was looking through my paperwork. He found the discrepancy. He called the judge, had the judge sign off on it and the prosecutor sign off on it. And just like that, my minimum dropped down to 0 years. I was so grateful. I thought that this was a sure thing of like things were going in a better direction, but still with a minimum of 0 years now, I still was given that sentence that I was given.
What
so these are things I can't tell you what the discrepancy was, and I cannot tell you, but this is only reason why I'm sharing this part about my case is just because this is the things that I share on my platform, because I want folks to know that the system doesn't play fair. So it's just me encouraging them that if they're on the wrong path, to change their life course.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that and handled all that stuff so well, because that's all this stuff is challenging, trying to figure out how to deal with these things, because the population doesn't want that. People don't want you going to prison. I don't want people going to jail in general for something that is, we know the justice system has its problems. It's not fair. It is cooked against certain people, whether it's socioeconomic, ethnic, whatever it is, which definitely tilted against folks, like that great serial. I don't know if you listened to that serial podcast where they chronicled the court system in and around the Cleveland area, but there's people disappearing and that are unaccounted for and incarcerated illegally incarcerated, like kept in a locker room or a closet, with inadequate provisions and all these things, like suspending licenses stacking 18 suspensions of your license for things like parking tickets and all these things. So yeah, if you don't have money to have a lawyer go in and say, hey, we need to wipe all this out in one shot, you get trapped in the system and you literally get turned into a prisoner. And, and someone who you can't break out of the system. And I can understand why people are defeated by that. Once you're in for those 5 years, I'm sorry, you did more than that. You did 8 years. Once you're in for those 8 years, how did you grow personally? Because one of the things I've found from doing the Prison Chronicles is a lot of the people are like, regardless of my crime and everything else, I had to reckon with my own stuff, my own things. You didn't have these big problems. You didn't come into the system as a person who's been abused or raised in gangs or raised around tons of violence. It sounds like you came from a loving home. How did you sort through all that stuff? That seems impossible to me.
So, I mean, I had my own traumas that, yes, I came from a loving household, but yeah, I had my own traumas that I had to deal with, and I had really lost myself. So for me, it's just it was me tapping into myself, honestly. It was hearing what those things that prosecutor had said about me, and it was not allowing them to win. For allowing them to win with me just to go in there and to succumb to whatever they, wanted me to be, try to make me out to be, and just bow down to it. Mm. And that's totally not anything a part of my personality. So the day that I went in there, I was determined to make the system work for me. And so I was going to make and that's what I did, as I made my time work for me. Every day I had a lot of rebuilding to do with myself. I was a young girl who had got involved with an older man and just totally lost myself. And so I had to figure out how to rebuild that, how to get myself together, how to find my self-confidence again, how to, one of the toughest journeys being incarcerated as a woman as a young girl was finding myself as a woman. I took that journey very seriously. That's what I did. And I was just blessed that I've been to 5 different federal prisons. I've met some amazing, beautiful women, some of the best women like that. I mean, just the most amazing, amazing people behind those walls. And I was also there with a lot of young girls. And so I took responsibility, and a lot of people looked up to me. And so therefore, I felt like I had to get myself together and show them that they can get themselves together as well. So it was just this whole journey of me figuring myself, finding myself up, building myself, and making the time work for me.
I want to ask Matt a question.
That's what I did.
Because your point of view is so different, Matt. Like you've got you weren't in the federal system, you're in the state system. You didn't bounce around from place to place like across the nation like London did. Can you make any sense out of this? How does this resonate with you?
You mean in terms of how a person can just dig deep and make that
just
change,
the whole thing, like
or...
the deal that goes sideways, and she goes from a minimum of 0 to having to do 8 years, and just how does it strike you? Like when you hear her story, what stands out?
Oh yeah, I mean it's definitely unfair. I mean the federal system just compared to the state, I mean it's a big difference, and it's always been known whether it was crack or powder and what the differences are as far as who gets more time. I mean, those are facts. The numbers don't lie. So, I mean, that's definitely how it went. And, to kind of elaborate on her point was, as far as, first-time offenders especially, I mean, whether it's federal or state, they should really be taking a hard look at that. Because like she said, a lot of people went the other way. A lot of people got schooled from people that were doing time their whole life. So you got a youngster that's going to prison, and all of a sudden he gets hooked up with the wrong people. Now he's a career criminal. He
Right.
goes in and out of prison. That's who he learns from. He learns what he thinks are bigger and better ways instead of turning around the other way. Maybe having somebody guide him in the right direction, like London was a part of, taking on that responsibility with, younger girls or even people older. There was a lot of people older than me that were very mentally immature. So it's a bad thing the way it is, but I think, to talk about that is somebody that's, first time offender, definitely. I mean, they should look at other options. They should try to find out better ways. You can go somewhere else besides prison. So you'd really have to look at the person's background. And mine is completely different. I mean, I had traumas in my life as well, but I made a lot of poor decisions. I was violent, and I did need to be off the street.
Right.
So I earned the time that I got. I took a life, so that's a completely different story.
Right.
So,
of course.
It's
one of the reasons why I wanted to go through that part of it is just because the audience is going to be shocked hearing all of this stuff. I mean, especially when in a lot of places, marijuana is legal. You can, in California, you can legally buy it, grow it, sell it. There's rules and everything, but it's legal. And to think that people are still going to federal prison for a long time, and disproportionately so for people of lower economic class, certain ethnicities, all those things. Again, I don't think that's what the greater population wants. And from my point of view, and just kind of getting caught up on this, it doesn't sound like London is someone that I need in prison for 8 years. I'd rather we spend a little bit of money and get you the help that you need, to help find yourself and that kind of thing. So let me ask you this then, London, as you're trying to rediscover yourself and put yourself on a path.
Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here. And if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it.
Rediscover yourself and put yourself on a path. Did you need this big event to cause the change in your life, or were you were you stuck in your regular life? And not that you need to go to prison. I'm not saying that, but did you need something cataclysmic in your life to get you going in the right direction again, so that you could rediscover and get that? And then, what would have been the better solution? Would it be case management through social work? What would have helped you think, get your ship righted sooner and then outside of the prison system? Did you need something big, something cataclysmic in your life, like prison, to trigger your transformation back into you? Not that I need you to go to prison, not that anybody needs you to go away for 8 years. Just in general, hearing your case, I don't need you to go to prison for that. And if you need help through case management or whatever it is, let's get you that. So 2-part question. Did you need something major in your life to shake you out of where you were at? And then 2, what else could it have been? What would have been a non-correction based solution that you could have gotten? Is it the government that provides that, or is it a church or a women's group or whatever? What kind of help would have been more appropriate for where you were in your life?
I think the help that would have just been helpful for me was just, honestly, I know that just having a strong person pull me to the side, man or woman, particularly a female, who would have just talked to me. I really think that that's honestly the God's honest truth, that I think at the time of my life, I was just so lost. My family, I've been raised by strong women, but my family was going through a lot at a time. So we were everybody was just all like going through the toughest part in our lives. And so therefore I ran from my family. My family is, they didn't understand the life that I was in. So I hid from them. But if I wish that I would have had somebody to say, hey sis, you're not alone, and could have talked to me and, instead of preaching to me, I think that for sure that would have helped me. But let me say this too, is that because I think it's just, it wouldn't even feel right for me to just answer that part of the question and not answer, especially a lot of the Black men that I know personally that are behind those walls and the things that they go through. See, and when you're in the inner city and you grow up like that, you feel cut off, and you feel cut off from the world, and you feel like what you have around you, you succumb to that. And that's the only thing that you feel like you have. So oftentimes, when people look down on the drug dealers and this and the other, honestly, those are sometimes our biggest idols in our community, because we're just so used to being poor and out or whatever the case. Those are the ones who look like they're making it. So we tend to idolize them, right? And so and for them, the reason why they get into this, a lot of the guys that I know and even females who get into that type of lifestyle or whatever the case is because they feel like it's one of their only ways out. It's like, if you can't play basketball, if you can't rap or whatever the case, then that's like your only other option. And so people might think that's a poor piss excuse or whatever like that, but it's really not. It's not an excuse. And so I think that in society in general, is if we start pumping more investments into these communities and sources of elevating, just, even in the inner city's public school system, the school system that I went to was horrible. But when I went and my mother moved me to a different area, I saw the total difference of what they were privy to versus what I've been, this type of school system I've been in my entire life. So I think that all those things of reaching back into these, the poorer communities and building them up, I think that would have a huge turnaround and helping the folks in feel like they can do other things in the mountain to the things that, negative behaviors and so forth. Like, people don't just wake up being bad people. There's things that happen.
Wait, they don't just wake up and go, today's the day I'm going to be evil. Yeah, right. Of course. Like that's the total reality. And then there's also trauma in life, all life. And as you try to navigate through trauma, like your mom being sick or whatever it is, these things have a toll on you and make you desperate and in need of something. Like I'll just project and say, maybe your mom wasn't able to give as much because she was fighting this disease, this ailment. And so, you're not getting what you need in terms of emotional comfort, and you become exploitable to someone else who's got some other goal for you. I can completely understand that type of a situation. And again, the socioeconomic thing where you just don't have any room to have less of whatever it is, because the school is not the best school. The jobs available don't give you enough money. And so when you get a flat tire and it costs you $150 to replace it, now what? I didn't have $150. How do I cover that gap? So you end up trying to just survive and thrashing about instead of being able to thrive. When you look at where you are.
Can I just say this though?
Yeah, please.
Because this is a thing that, like, this is what I wrote. One of the things I put in my book, right? Is I wrote a book while I was down. And see, I love to have these conversations because from the outside in, right, you might think that's the cost. Like, oh my goodness, I have a flat tire, $150. Like, what am I to do? Blah, blah, blah. The rent is due or whatever the case. But the folks that I grew up with, the folks who I were involved with, their situations more so started off when they were supposed to be protected from the world, when they were having to survive. So when their parents are maybe strung out on drugs or parents are not there, killed or in the system themselves or whatever the case, they grow up in a house that looks like it's like floorboards. It's like literally like stuff just thrown together where they have weeds growing in the middle of their living room through the floorboards, where the food is scarce, and like literally like between 6 siblings or whatever the case, sharing one can of food, passing around in a circle until it's gone or whatever the case. So yeah, you know what? When someone tells you that you can start selling a nickel bag or whatever the case it may be, whatever drug it might be, to help you, where it could just start off with this particular a person's story that I really knew, just buying a slice, a pizza for the family or whatever the case, then you know what? Sure, right. That's what the person does. Absolutely. And could you blame them? Yeah. And so I think that it's more than, for some other people's lives that it might be like you said, a busted tire, a blown out tire, whatever the case. But for some folks or whatever the case, it's just the means of being able to eat that night.
Yeah.
And so people don't know that that's a lot of people's reality. And it's just certain things that, with a lot of people that you meet in the system, a lot of them are very broken. A lot of them, like women, most of the women that I've been in prison with have been sexually molested since they were very young. From the very ones that are supposed to be protected for them, that just drew them on this horrible course. This disgusting things, since they were 5, 6 years old, that have been happening to them. And so when you hear these things, you say, well, of course you did the things that you do, but do you think that the system took any of those things into account? No, they did not. They threw them in prison. Yeah.
One of the things that Honor Ray, he's a rapper. He used to be a rapper named X-Rated. He still raps, but now his name's Honor Ray Vachon, his regular name. And he was saying that, they teach us to be hard and emotionless in society. And you go in the courtroom and you're also told not to show emotion, because if you do, if you react to things, it goes negatively for you and they look down upon you as a person because you're not showing the proper amount of remorse. So he's like, so if you show emotion, you get in trouble. And if you don't show emotion, you get in trouble. And you're really in this trap. And then also, by the way, this just in, nobody's good at going to court. It's not, they make you look like a huge jerk. Whether it's legitimate or not, it's still a horrible experience for you to go through when you're supposed to somehow, without any practice, without any coaching, without any experience in life, come through these experiences, perfectly. And it's a completely unfair and unrealistic thing. Something I'd never even considered before he told me about that. But you think about how we judge someone without hearing any of the case or anything else, just by looking at them. And it's a wholly unfair system. And the damage, again, that people go through in the day-to-day life, right? And I'm using Theyre as an example, but of course, if you're 6 people sharing beans and you're happy to have the beans, you're left to not make what else is available to you. I mean, I'm not saying you have to sell drugs, but that's a legitimate option for folks. So when I was in Iraq and Afghanistan, we'd have people that we were looking for that were doing black market, fuel sales, selling gasoline. And I would tell my commander, like, who cares about those guys? Those guys are working and they're trying to make ends meet. And if that's how they're choosing to do it, we got bigger fish to fry than worrying about some guy selling gas and trying to feed his family. I'd rather him sell gas than do something else, because they're in survival mode. And it's tragic that there's people in survival mode in our nation with all the things that we have, and all the people that want to help other folks. It seems like we should be able to be more efficient at getting help to the folks that need it. It breaks my heart to hear that, in this day and age, that there's still people with weeds growing through the floorboards of their house. It just shouldn't be that way.
It is very sad. And you know what? I forgot. I wish I had it for you, the information, the actual number, but just you can Google it. How many prisons in California, in the state of California, that they had built over the amount of schools that they had built, how much money they pump into the system versus how much money they pump into our education, right? And so, and it's another thing too, it's just all these little things. I wish that, I encourage everybody, especially Black folks, but everybody should go to the museum in Alabama called the Legacy Museum, which shows the history between slavery and mass incarceration. And then there's things that you just can't turn away from, like just how how it was set up, even how the whole when slavery was abolished and the whole transition of everything. And I mean, it's just really sickening. And and I know I'm not making this I'm not going to say I'm not making it a race thing, because I know it. I can't say I'm not, because I do believe that race plays, I know that race plays a big thing in this. But even like you just said, is going, no one can do court right, the whole, going into the court. And it just made me think of how, as a Black woman and everything, I just remember being in county and watching the Black women getting ready for court, and because of our hair is a different type of course, and we don't have the right products, so we put our hair in braids and so forth just to make it, just to do the best that we can do to get to court date or whatever the case. But how when we're there, how I would hear some of the people tell them that they look like they did their crime just because of the way that they looked, the way because they couldn't slick their hair back or something. Mm-hmm. That's why I've actually heard people tell them, their own lawyers tell them, that why did you do your hair like that? You're making yourself look bad. You look like you did the crime. That is just disgusting. But it's a lot of truth behind what they said when they said that.
Yeah, interesting. So, yeah, that's, again, I don't think that's what society wants, is for you to be judged on your haircut, and because you choose to braid your hair. Yeah, it's that's not what we need, So, okay, you are out now. Let's get on some of the better things, because, good Lord, that's some tragedy, and that's not where you're at now. Let's talk about where you're at now, how you're helping, and how you've grown.
How I'm helping, I'm grown is I've chosen to be a part of the solution, no longer the problem. So for me, it's me chasing my dreams, and to show everybody, but especially the Black community, especially Black women, that they can do whatever they put their minds to, that they can choose to really dig deep and rise above, that we together as a community have to get together to help to elevate one another. And so Before when I went to prison, I was all about being the actress, but now I'm more on the production side.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I want to create work that helps to change the narrative, that helps to create empathy, and to also help to have these raw type conversations. I believe that sometimes we can't even get down to the real solution because we don't really address the problem in the raw. Everybody wants to be political. Everybody wants to speak around and speak over and put a little sugar here and there, this and the other. No, what I would love to do is to create work and it's raw, because I believe that that's what needs to be brought to the table if we're going to ever create realistic solutions, and so that we can empower people and start holding people accountable. So that's what I'm about now as far as my work.
How do you make money doing that? How do you generate revenue?
So I am a policy fellow. I've started other two little businesses. So I'm into health. So I sell total life change products. I'm also a travel agent. So if anybody wants to travel, I'm an agent.
I like to
and
travel.
I also, yeah, well, please, I got a lot of great deals. I've just been really blessed. God has just truly blessed me upon coming home and just connecting me to amazing people that's been opening doors for me. So I have started on my own documentary project. And so these things I've been afforded things to help me to support me in doing the things, what I want to do as far as my purpose. And my purpose is to encourage the forgotten, the ones that folks don't normally want to deal with. And when I say that, though, I always have to tell people, though, there's many different groups of forgotten, but the particular group that God has put me for is the inner city folks, the ones that are rough around the edges, that are misunderstood. So my purpose is to do things to create outlets and to encourage them.
Yeah. Well, I love that. We had a guy named Remy Adeleke. He's from the Bronx, and he just barely got out. Just barely got out, and he's become this wonderful, powerful person where they had this whole life tragedy. His book is wonderful. It's called Transformed. But, he goes from, hustling, being on the edge of the law, trying to build a rap label, doing things that are illegal in terms of cell phone sales, all these things. And he's literally, there's a decision point, and he makes it by the skin of his teeth and some favors from some people that didn't have to help him but saw something in him. And to think about how many times that scenario ends up with Remy dead or in jail for the rest of his life, it's for some reason, it's he needed that thing from the outside, and he ended up becoming a Navy SEAL. How many people from the Bronx become a Navy SEAL? How many black guys who were born in Africa become Navy SEAls? It's just such an impossible story, but you look at him now and you're just like, man, all that guy needed was half a chance, at the right time, and his life is completely different, because I'm positive people he knew growing up aren't with us today because, they didn't have that last chance. They didn't make that choice then. They chose to, they went 6 more months with the hustling on the side deal that was against the law, and they went to prison, and and then who knows what happens from there. So it's great to hear that you're out there trying to unlock people's dreams and get them going towards them. And as you know, Matt knows, I know, the path isn't easy. The path is going to be hard. It's not going to make sense a lot of times. And sometimes you've got to figure out how to slow down and do something different, because you don't just overcome every obstacle. Sometimes you have to really work at identifying the obstacle and find the door that goes through it, or some other way. So I can appreciate what you're doing, and I know that you're passionate about it, and I can't wait to hear more about the documentary. When you've got it closer to production, I want you to come back on and talk about it with me. Tell us what's next for you right now in the immediate future. How can people support you?
How people can support me is just definitely follow me on Instagram, startin_with_London. And right there is just a community. It really means a lot to me, because I've been just super interactive with the folks, and just folks are opening up and sharing things that they have going on. So if you just become active on my page, you might find someone that you might want to reach out to and support. Everyone needs a support system. Everybody needs to feel like they're cared about. Everyone needs to feel like someone sees them and everybody needs to feel some type of love. I'm the type of person that I feel like, and I know truly that a hug can save a life. So if you stop by my page and just see that, I always keep people in tune to what I have going on. If you like to get involved or just, simply leave comments and support, that will be super dope.
We like stuff that's super dope around here. Cool. Matt, anything else in closing? You want to ask a question?
No, I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you for the opportunity and, allowing the use of the platform, not to just get this individual stories out, but, in aiding and helping London in every way, because she's so passionate about what she does.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys taking the time. I mean, these things are hard to understand and hard to accept. And, if we don't have these conversations, folks that have good hearts and genuinely want to help, they don't know how to do it and where to go and what to understand what the reality is. I mean, that's why we try to lend perspective on this show and let people understand that there's good folks out there that they need a break. They need, a couple of bucks or whatever it is. And a lot of times the help they need it's immediate and it's small and it's totally doable. But if we start with that person's got a haircut I don't like, well then what the fuck? We can't go anywhere if we can't get past a fucking haircut, So I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for coming on. For sure, London, come back and let's make sure we connect and stay together, because I love what you're doing. I love your passion, and I want to be able to support you.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing what you're doing, or as well as it develops and you can share, truly.